my journey through education, I've been a primary school teacher, or I was a primary school teacher for about 17 years, ended up as a deputy head teacher. I was still part-time deputy teaching and doing the deputy role. And I think balancing that was one of the most challenging things I had to do. I thought I got it all sorted after the first year, but I certainly hadn't. And I was working around 70 to 90 hours a week in my second year before I had a bit of a breakdown essentially, and I stepped out of teaching. Now it's been quite a long road to recovery. I'm not going to go into the story because actually I've written about it. If you want to read it, you can see it. I think it's on the Teach Primary website. I can certainly link to it if you want to. And it's certainly how I met Andrew, actually. We connected as a result of me telling my story, and he's told his. And actually, there's quite a good link between the two of them, my experience and his. Now, over the last 4 years, I've been setting up a business where I am hopefully solving one of the problems that I had, which was providing a safe space for people to connect to talk to share challenges and overcome them together. And I've also been doing a lot of studying on leadership, partly because I want to be able to help people and I need to have an understanding of it. So this presentation is going to be a reflection, the characteristics of the leader that I actually wish I had been, and how I might have done things differently. And it's certainly, they are general characteristics, but hopefully you can see how they apply to lots of different situations, and particularly school leadership. So I'm going to start off with a couple of things. Now, my experience of speaking to head teachers, there are two styles of head teachers, or two types of head teachers. You could probably subcategorize them, so it's a bit of a generalization, but there are managers. And the first type of head teacher is those that manage things. Now, a manager has employees. Okay, managing is about manipulating resources, it's about getting a job done, and it's a great attribute to have if you're running a McDonald's franchise, you know, where you're managing a process you've seen before, you're reacting to the outside world, you're concentrating on the details, you look for efficiencies, you track data, you measure performance, and you focus on creating a product. And now in a past life, I was a provisions department manager at a supermarket, and I had to be a manager. I had to manage my staff, track losses, keep an eye on dates, ensure staff were trained properly, carried out their duties, and there was a process to be followed, okay, which is very much what I focused on. And that's what managers do. They follow a process to produce a product. Now, for me, leadership isn't just about management. Yes, you need to have some of those skills. You need to be able to manage things, but actually leadership is much more about creating change. And it's about creating a change that you believe in. Managers will have rules that you've got to adhere to. Usually there's long lists of non-negotiables. There's possibly an unwillingness to allow people to take risks because it disrupts the process and how things work. Leaders tend not to care for that process-driven structure. They will use their passion, their ideas to lead people. No threats, no unnecessary bureaucracy. They have a belief in a vision which they convey to their staff. They allow risks to be taken, and I think a really good leader will catch people if they fall. They allow you to take those risks. They will pick you up afterwards. They'll steer you back on track. And as long as what you're doing will move people towards a shared vision, then they'll have belief in their staff. They'll believe in what they're doing. So I think the difference I'm saying here is managers have employees, whereas leaders will have followers. They've inspired people to go with them. Managers follow a process, whereas leaders, they change the process and they're about making everyone's life better. So with that in mind, I think there are several characteristics I wish I'd had. The first of which is challenging the status quo. Now, the status quo does need to be challenged, but not for the sake of making change. It's about improving things for those that you as a leader serve. Now, it doesn't matter whether you're a head teacher or you're just a department leader or you're lower down the scale. we can have leaders in lots of different places. It's about looking at what is being done now, the way we do things around here, and challenging those to make those improvements. People who challenge the way we do things around here tend to inspire others to change the rules, and they thrive because you're getting the opportunity to use your initiative. And if you as a leader can encourage people to use their initiative, you will find you have a happier staff, because when you are doing something that changes, you're having fun, you're enjoying it. And I think you've got to bring that element of enjoyment into leadership. Whatever it is, it's got to be fun. It's got to be enjoyable. There will be times when you're doing stuff you don't enjoy because it needs to be done. But the idea of challenging, making changes does need to be enjoyable. Now, as a leader, I didn't question why we did things a certain way enough. I think there were huge opportunities to change things and get rid of unneeded layers of bureaucracy, streamline processes, or even remove them completely. And I think that's one of the things I wish I'd done more, because I didn't take those opportunities and I didn't stand up for the changes I wanted to make. I didn't commit to the vision I had of what my role was. Now, the second element is about creating a culture. As a leader, you can't drive change alone. If you just turn up at a place and you impose change, you face far greater resistance than if you change the culture and you drive the change with everybody, with your community. Now, creating a culture can be challenging, particularly if you're moving into an organization where their culture is established as the way we do things around here. You'll hear me using that a lot. But this is the status quo that you probably want to and need to challenge. And to change that culture, you need to find advocates. You need to find people who believe in you, who believe in your ideas, your vision, who will follow you, and then convert others to your faith in your vision. So you'll hear me talking a lot about belief and faith, because if you have a vision of change and things you want to drive forward, that's what you will need. Now, faith is determined by your actions. If people are going to believe in you, you must be seen to walk the walk, talk the talk, and show that you genuinely believe in what you're doing. Now, one reason I failed, or I had the breakdown in my previous post, was that I believed in the ideas that were being presented by the head and that the head was communicating. But underneath that, there was an underpinning set of actions that I was being asked to do that weren't consistent with that vision. And there was a disconnect. I couldn't walk the walk and I couldn't talk the talk as much as I wanted to, because there was a big picture. This is what we're doing, what we want to achieve, but this is what we're doing. And the head themselves wasn't consistently walking the walk either. So there was less trust, I think, in where everybody was going. As a result of that, I think the culture in the school wasn't always right. Now, if you're going to change the culture, you've got to be the culture with everything that you do. So you've got to demonstrate your own faith in your vision, your faith in your staff, and you need to be prepared to take risks yourselves when you believe it's the right thing to do and the actions align with your vision, your faith, moving those forward. Now, I've talked about creating a culture. I've talked about challenging the status quo, but I've also said don't do it for the sake of change. If you're going to go into any community, you need to be curious about that community. If you're going to lead successfully, you need to understand the community, what motivates them, who they are, who has faith in your vision, who needs more persuading, who doesn't fit. Why don't they appear to fit? Why do they have objections? What are their objections? What does your community need that helps them to move towards that vision? There's a lot of questions you could ask there. I think sometimes finding the right question can be the hardest thing to do. But if you are not curious, you're imposing that change. And curiosity is really, really important here. The challenge you're going to face with things like this is the fundamentalism of those who believe in the way things already work. They tend not to be curious about what could be better and are quite often happy to settle with the status quo. How you feel? Personally, I have a problem with settling for the status quo. I think if you become comfort and you set in your comfort zone, you start to slide into mediocrity. You don't improve things. You don't constantly change your own status quo.
Now, I'm going to let you into a little secret. I'm not charismatic. I don't think that actually exists. I think charisma is about that little voice inside you that tells you can't do something. And if you ignore that voice and go and do it, what you'll find is once you start leading, once you start walking the walk, talking the talk, and inspiring others, you will develop that charisma and you will become charismatic because you are leading, you're doing that job. So for me, charisma is a choice, not a gift. So don't ever think, oh, I can't do this because I don't have the charisma to lead. It's cobblers, for want of a better word at the moment. Now, I've talked a lot about loads of things, but I think one of the key things that everyone really needs to think about is the vision. And this might seem blindingly obvious, and I think virtually every leadership course will tell you about communicating the vision, making sure people will understand it and see it. But actually, little is done about truly developing how to communicate to people and how to do it well. So if there's one tip I think that you should be going and doing, it's learning how to tell stories. Because if you can tell a story, then you can take people with you. And when it comes to sharing your vision, don't share little bits of it, share the whole thing, share the big dream. Because if you say, this is where we want to be going to, the big dream, you will take people with you. It may be a utopia, but you know what? Most people are dreamers. Even the most cynical amongst us have little dreams that they want to achieve. And if you're telling stories and showing how this dream is possible and the way to get there, people are going to engage with you and they'll understand your vision. They will go with you. So yeah, big tip, master storytelling. I'm still working on that, as you can probably tell. Now, not the last thing, there's two more things. Connecting and committing to your vision. So once you've communicated your vision, and I've talked about belief before, you've got to commit to it. If you say, oh, we're going to do something, but you don't truly believe in it, and you don't make sure your actions are leading towards it, then you water down your vision. You lose the people that are going to follow you because you're not demonstrating, this is what I want to do. This is what we're going to achieve. You can get sidetracked. You'll drift off into different directions if you're not careful. So everything you do, make sure your actions are leading you towards the end destination. Don't compromise on this destination. And that doesn't mean don't listen to others. It doesn't mean that you're not curious. People who just listen. People respect people who listen. Ronald Reagan was often said to be one of the greatest presidents, not because of necessarily what he did, but people respected him because he listened. He often still went and did what he wanted to do anyway, but he took the time to listen. And I think that was a massively important thing that made him so highly respected. Because I can guarantee if you constantly aim, you may be a utopia, you may be shooting for the stars, you might miss, but you might land on the moon. And that's a lot further on than where you were before. Now, one of the other things I learned, I guess, as being a leader is the idea of, I've called people followers, but it's connecting people. Leaders can be, if you're not careful, choke points. If everything has to come through you, then actually you slow down the progress. So if you can look at the people who you are leading and the wonderful things you know they're capable of, simply getting the right people to talk to each other massively helps. Now, each of them will have dreams. So if you're a leader at the top, you will have lots of other leaders underneath you. They've all got their own dreams, their own utopias they're trying to achieve. If you help them achieve their dreams, connecting them, sharing the dreams, they will help you achieve yours. I can almost guarantee that if you've built the culture about that, about this, they will take you where you want to go. I think that's probably it. I think some final thoughts, though, that are worth bearing in mind. There's me and my website, but I think before you go off and make life hell for your own leaders by challenging the status quo, because I've talked about that a lot, about challenge, do think about a couple of things. Your role as a leader is to make other people's lives easier, not harder. Unnecessary change is almost as bad as no change at all, and the status quo remaining the same. Be curious. It's really important. And by being curious, it means really listening. It means understanding the school you're in, the people you lead, because you lead with their permission, not with a gun to their head. So if you want to take them with you, sell your vision by being authentic. Don't be something other than the person you are, the person who believes in what you're doing, and don't do the stuff you don't believe in. I guess the caveat to that is if it's your boss, in which case do it, but possibly question it privately. Don't do it, have that quiet word. Why are we doing this? Don't do it in public, because you won't do yourself or anybody any favors that way. Have the private word first. And I think most of all, don't listen to the voice in your head that tells you you can't do something, because if you listen to that, you'll never do anything. Thank you very much for listening. I hope I wasn't speeding along too quickly.